What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Neurosketch with Dr. Ken. But if this is the first time you're seeing this channel, don't forget to subscribe. Today we're going to talk about anatomy of the tongue, and the tongue is a muscular organ, and most importantly is one among special sense organs. It is so important in sensation of taste. Taste sensation is what makes the tongue one among special sense organ. So it's a muscular organ, meaning it has got muscles, and the muscles of the tongue are very important because they are changing the shape of the tongue. They are also moving the tongue into different direction, and this is so important in activities like mastication, where the tongue, mix food in within the oral cavity, but swallowing is made possible by the movement of the muscles of the tongue, and also speaking is made possible by the movement of the muscles of the tongue. We're going to talk about the mechanism of speech at some point, and let's spare this for the next time. We have a situation in which the tongue is tied to the floor of the mouth. Listen, we have a condition which is called ankylosing, and the ankylosing translates into tight tongue. In this situation, in this condition, the tongue is tied to the floor of the mouth, and so the movement of the tongue is limited. Listen, because we have limited movement of the tongue, we also have limited ability of speaking. Why? Because the tongue is tied to the floor of the mouth, movement is not free, and so someone experiences difficulty in speaking or sometimes even in mastication. This condition is called ankylosing, and this individual has to see a doctor, whereby this structure which is tying the tongue to the floor of the mouth has to be released for tongue to have free movement within the oral cavity for these activities to take place. The tongue is divided in two parts by the line which is called the sulcus terminalis, or the terminal sulcus here. So we have anterior two-third and the posterior third. Anterior two-third and the posterior third of the tongue are divided by the groove which is called the sulcus terminalis, or the terminal sulcus. And at the apex of the terminal sulcus, we have a foramen which is called the foramen cecum. It's not really a foramen, but it's a remnant of a proximal part of the thyroglossal duct. Remember, tongue and the thyroid gland have got same embryological origin, and so they were connected initially by the structure which is called the thyroglossal duct. And the thyroglossal duct, proximally, it was opening at this foramen cecum here at the junction, at the apex of the sulcus terminalis, the terminal sulcus, and it later obliterates, it becomes a remnant, and it's called the foramen cecum. But the tongue is also divided into right and left by the so-called median groove, or the median sulcus. The median sulcus is dividing the tongue into right and left halves. But the tongue can also be divided in this system, whereby we have a root of the tongue, we have the body of the tongue, and the apex. The root of the tongue, it represents the posterior third of the tongue. The same posterior third of the tongue here represents the root of the tongue, and the anterior two-third of the tongue is further subdivided into the body of the tongue, and the apex of the tongue. Okay, and then we've seen we have the sulcus terminalis, the terminal sulcus here, which is separating these two anterior two-third and the posterior third. And then we have this which is called the epiglottis. This is the epiglottis, and so we have the folds which are connecting epiglottis and the tongue. So these folds, we call them the glossoepiglottic fold, because they're connecting the glossus, the tongue, and the epiglottis. So the glossoepiglottic folds. Now we have one is median and two are lateral. So we have median glossoepiglottic fold, and two lateral glossoepiglottic folds. Next is going to be the vallecula, and the vallecula is this depression here between the median glossoepiglottic fold and the lateral glossoepiglottic fold on either side. We also have the lymphatic structures here, which are called the lingual tonsils. These are the lingual tonsils. They have a lymphatic, the lymphatic lull, and also within the palatine tonsils, within the palatine fossa, we have the palatine tonsils. These are the palatine tonsils. These are the lingual tons. Next, let's discuss about the lingual papilla. Now we have small elevations on the dorsum of the. Let me take you back here. The superior surface of the tongue, is called the dorsum of the tongue. Now, on the dorsum of the tongue, we have small elevations. Small elevations are rise these structures, which are called the lingual papilla. The function of this lingual papilla is sensation of taste because they have got taste buds, the sensation of taste because they have got taste buds, and the perception of food texture, the perception of food texture. As you can see, we have different shapes of this lingual papilla, and we have to discuss each one in turn. We have 4 of them. Number 1, we have this one, which is called the circumvallate. The biggest one, they are called the circumvallate, and the circumvallates, they are large and flat topped. Their tops are flat. And then what's so important about the circumvallate is that they have plenty of taste buds. Sense of sensation is maximum at this circumvallate lingual papilla. Next, we're gonna have this foliate papilla, and the foliate papilla, they are limited. They are poorly developed in humans, so they are not even found in this. They are not even shown in this picture. These are the foliate papilla. They are poorly developed in humans. And then the next gonna be the filiform papilla. The filiform papilla, they are numerous in humans. They are numerous. The filiform papilla are the numerous ones. They are long because the shape, they are long, but they are very numerous compared to all other lingual papilla, and what is so important about the filiform papilla is that they do not have taste buds. All other lingual papilla have got taste buds, with the exception of filiform papilla, which has got no taste bud, and these are the numerous ones. And then lastly, we have this, which are mushroom shaped. They have the shape of the mushroom. Because of mushroom shape, they are called the fungiform papilla. Do we have taste bud in fungiform papilla? Yes, we have taste bud, with the exception of the filiform papilla. Where are the locations of this papilla? Well, the circumvallate ones, they are limited. Listen, let me take you back here. We do not have the foliate papilla are poor developed in humans. But of these which are found in human, the circumvallate, the filiform, and the fungiform, the circumvallate is less abundant. Like, we have few of them, and they are counted in human. They are counted. We have like 8 to 12 of these circumvallate papilla. And where are the location? Where do you find these circumvallate papilla? It is just anterior to the sulcus terminalis, to the terminal sulcus. Just anterior to the terminal sulcus is where you're gonna find this circumvallate papilla, which has got a lot of taste buds. And then your foliate, if you have one, because they are poor developed in humans, if you have one, they are found on the lateral surface, on the lateral sides of the tongue. And then we have said the filiform ones, they are abundant ones. They are numerous in number. They occupy almost everywhere. And then in between the filiform, you will see you have fungiform. These fungiform, they are scattered within the filiform papilla. These are the lingual papilla. Next, let's talk about general sensory innervation of the tongue. Now, the sensory innervation of the tongue is divided into 2 parts. General sensation, these are the sensation tends to pain, touch, temperature, and stuff like that. Okay, but also have special sensation, because we have said the tongue is a special sense organ. We have special sensation, which is a sense of taste. Now we have divided sensation of the tongue into general sensation and special sensation. And the tongue is receiving general sensation specifically from 3 nerves. Number 1 is going to be your lingual nerve. Number 2 is glossopharyngeal nerve, and number 3 is vagus nerve. 3 nerves that are giving general sensation to the tongue. Now, if you divide your tongue into anterior 2/3 and the posterior 1/3, we will say the anterior 2/3 of the tongue is receiving general sensation from the lingual nerve, correct? And then the posterior 1/3 of the tongue is receiving general sensation from 2 nerves, the glossopharyngeal nerve, which is cranial nerve number 9, and the vagus nerve, which is cranial nerve number 10. Now, let's talk about the spatial sensation of the tongue. The spatial sensation of the tongue. We have said the posterior 1/3 of the tongue is receiving general sensation from glossopharyngeal nerve and the vagus nerve. Now, these same nerves, they are giving spatial sensation to the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. So things do not change in the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. They also receive special sensation. The posterior 1/3 of the tongue is receiving special sensation from the glossopharyngeal nerve and the vagus nerve. Doesn't change. Everything is the same. But things change in the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. The anterior 2/3 of the tongue was receiving general sensation from the lingual nerve, but the anterior two-thirds of the tongue is receiving special sensation, sense of taste from the chorda tympani. A chorda tympani is a branch of facial nerve. A chorda tympani is a branch of facial nerve. So the anterior two-thirds special sensation is by chorda tympani, branch of facial nerve. The posterior third of the tongue is receiving both general sensation and the special sensation from glossopharyngeal nerve and vagus nerve. That's easy. You're gonna all remember. Next, let's discuss about the muscles of the tongue. Muscles of the tongue are divided in two parts. Okay, the intrinsic muscles of the tongue and extrinsic muscles of the tongue. The intrinsic muscles of the tongue, they have got no bone attachment, and most importantly, what they do, they change the shape of the tongue. They do not move the tongue, they change the shape of the tongue. But the extrinsic muscles of the tongue, they have bony attachment, and what is so important about these muscles, they are moving tongue into different directions. Let's start which one in turn, starting with intrinsic muscles of the tongue. Now we have 4 intrinsic muscles of the tongue, and these muscles are defined according to orientation, on the tongue. So we have muscles which we call them the longitudinalis. We have 2 groups of longitudinalis, and this is why we have 4 muscles in total. We have 2 groups of longitudinalis, the superior longitudinalis and the inferior longitudinalis. Why are they called longitudinalis? Because they are running in a long axis of the tongue. Okay, because if this is my tongue, the longitudinalis muscle, they are running from posterior to anterior, so they are running in long axis of the tongue, and they are called longitudinalis. But we have superior and the inferior longitudinalis muscle, and then we also have the muscles which are running on a horizontal fashion, like from side of the tongue to the other side of the tongue. These muscles are called the horizontalis muscle. And then we have muscles which are running from up to down. These muscles are running in vertical direction. They are called the verticalis muscle. So we have verticalis muscle, horizontalis muscle, and longitudinalis, 2 groups of longitudinalis muscle. These muscles have no bone attachment, and they change the shape of the tongue. They do not move they are doing much of changing the shape than moving the tongue. And then what's easy about the muscles of the tongue, all intrinsic muscles of the tongue, they are supplied by hypoglossal nerve, which is cranial nerve number 12. Now let's discuss about the extrinsic muscles of the tongue. Extrinsic muscles, these muscles are not originating from the tongue. They are coming outside from the tongue to insert to the tongue. The intrinsic muscles of the tongue, they are found within the tongue. Like tongue is a muscular structure, it's a muscular organ, so it has got muscles inside. These muscles are called the intrinsic muscles of the tongue. But we have muscles which are coming from where they're coming from bones to insert to the tongue. This muscle, we call them extrinsic muscles. And the function of these muscles, because they're coming from bones to insert to the tongue, their action is to move the tongue into different direction. And this movement is very important because speaking is made possible by movement of the tongue, but also mixing foods within the oral cavity is also made possible. But swallowing is also made possible by these extrinsic muscles of the tongue. Now, what are the bony bones from which these muscles are coming from? We have the mandible here. This is the mandible. Now, this is half the sagittal section. This is the mandible. We have the palatine bone. We have the palatine bone. We have the hyoid bone and the styloid process of the temporal bone. So what are these muscles? Number 1, these muscles are easy to name because you name them according to origin and insertion. Origin is going to be bones. Insertion is going to be the tongue. So these muscles will end up with glossas in their names. For example, this muscle is coming from palatine bone to insert to the tongue is called the palatoglossal muscle because it's going to insert to the tongue. Next is going to be the muscle which is coming from the styloid process to insert to the tongue. This is called the styloglossal muscle. Next is going to be the muscle which is coming from the hyoid bone to insert it to the tongue. This muscle is called the hypoglossal muscle. And we also have a muscle which is coming from the mandible, but to be specific, it's coming from the genial tubercles of the mandible, which are also referred as the mental spine, the genial tubercle of the mandible. And we have two sets of genial tubercle. We have 2 superior genial tubercle and 2 inferior genial tubercle, And this muscle, the genioglossus muscle, is coming from, we have two genioglossus muscles. Remember, all these muscles are found on either side, on the right side and on the left side. Now we have the genioglossus muscle on the right side and the genioglossus muscle on the left side, and they are all coming from the respective superior genio tubercle. So superior genio tubercle on the right side, the superior genio tubercle on the left side, all supplying. They are all acts at the origin of these muscles. So let's discuss each one in turn, starting with this muscle, which is called the palatal-glossus. Now let me give you a simple rule to remember the muscles of the tongue, innervation of the muscles of the tongue. All muscles of the tongue, including intrinsic and extrinsic, are being supplied by cranial nerve number 12, which is called the hypoglossal nerve, with the exception of palatal-glossus muscle. The palatal-glossus muscle is not supplied by the hypoglossal nerve, but instead is supplied by pharyngeal plexus through vagus nerve, which is cranial nerve number 10. What's the origin of the palatal-glossus? Is going to come from the soft palate here, and is going to insert on the side of the tongue. It's going to insert on the side of the tongue. Now, what is the action of this muscle? When this muscle contracts, it's going to pull the tongue superior and posterior. What's the innervation of this muscle? All muscles are supplied by hypoglossal nerve, with the exception of palatal-glossus. Next, going to be the styloglossus. The origin of the styloglossus is from the styloid process of the temporal bone. It's going to insert to the side on the under surface of the tongue here, the side and the under surface of the tongue. So what happens when this muscle contracts? When this muscle contracts, it pulls the tongue in this direction. So what is this direction? Number one, we have elevation of the tongue, and also it draws the tongue posteriorly. So it draws the tongue posteriorly, which is also called a retraction, and also it elevates the tongue. That's going to be your styloglossus. What is the nerve supply of the styloglossus? All muscles of the tongue are supplied by the hypoglossal nerve, with the exception of palatal-glossus muscle, which is supplied by vagus nerve, by pharyngeal plexus through vagus nerve. Next, going to be your hyoglossus muscle, and the hyoglossus muscle is taking origin from the hyoid bone. It is going to insert on the side of the tongue. What happens when this muscle contracts? Number one, it pulls the tongue inferior, so it depresses the tongue, and this depression of the tongue makes the tongue flat. So this muscle, hyoglossus muscle, it flattens the tongue, but also it draws to the side. It draws the tongue to the side when you want to move the tongue to the side. That's gonna be your hyoglossus muscle. What's the nerve supplied to the hyoglossus? All muscles of the tongue are supplied by hypoglossal nerve, with the exception of palatal-glossus muscle, which is supplied by pharyngeal plexus, or which is through the vagus nerve. Lastly, let's talk about the genioglossus, which is very, very important clinically. Genioglossus. The genioglossus is coming from the superior geniotubercle. This geniotubercle, also called the mental spine, the superior geniotubercle, is going to insert to the tongue. You see, it's going to say the under surface of the tongue. You see, downside here, under surface of the tongue. What happens when this muscle contracts? When this muscle contracts, it pulls the tongue into this direction, and it pulls the tongue in this direction. Now, if you want to resolve the force, it's gonna be this one and this one. So the tongue will, stick outside the mouth. What happens? This is what we call the protrusion of the tongue. So genioglossus muscle will help to depress the tongue, but most important is protrusion of the tongue, to protrude the tongue outside the mouth, and this is called the protraction of the tongue. This is so important, and we're going to see how important this movement is. Okay, so what's the nerve supplied to the genioglossus? All muscles of the tongue are supplied by the cranial nerve number 12, with the exception of palatal-glossus, which is supplied by pharyngeal plexus through the vagus nerve. Okay, so lastly, let's discuss about injury to the hypoglossal nerve. Remember, we have two hypoglossal nerves, one on the right and one on the left. So if someone has got injury to the left hypoglossal nerve, for example, they will have paralysis of the left half of the tongue. Remember, we have divided also the tongue into two halves by the median sulcus, the right and left. So injury to hypoglossal nerve will affect the same side of the tongue. And because you guys know about the role of use and disuse, we said if you have denervation of a muscle, that muscle is going to atrophy at some point. And this atrophy of the muscle of the tongue will give this shrunken appearance, and the tongue appears wrinkled. So it appears wrinkled and shrunken because we have atrophy of the muscles of the tongue. Now, because of this atrophy also, the muscle, the tongue is going to deviate, to the same side of the region, I have region on the left side, for example. I will have shrunken and wrinkling and atrophy on the left side of the tongue, and also the tongue will deviate to the left side. And this deviation becomes clinically evident when you ask the patient to protrude the tongue. The tongue. I told you, genioglossus is very important clinically because is the one that protrudes the tongue. Now, if you ask your client to protrude the tongue and the tongue deviates to one side, it points the site of region. And why do we have that deviation to that side? Because we have weakness of genioglossus muscle on that side. Listen, what is the action of the genioglossus muscle? Think with me. The genioglossus muscle is protruding the tongue outside. Now we have two genioglossus, one on the right and one on the left. The right one is not affected, the left one is affected. Because it's affected, it cannot pull the tongue outside, and so it becomes weak. But the right side, it can put the tongue outside, it can protrude the tongue outside. So this one goes out, the right side goes out, the left one does not go. So what happens is the left side, it pulls the tongue posterior, and so we have deviation on the same side. And this is so important to note. This is so important. Injured the hypoglossal nerve, you have ipsilateral deviation of the tongue. And you know why ipsilateral deviation of the tongue? Because especially when the person is protruding the tongue, because that muscle, the genioglossus muscle, cannot work properly. Alright guys, this is what I had for you today. And if you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to like and share with your friends, and see you very soon. Bye bye.